finally, we are back with a BT16 deck profile video. We've only been waiting for God knows how long for this. And naturally, for me, the best deck to start with is going to be the Imperialdramon DNA stuff. So we'll get straight into it, as we've all waited long enough, I think. So starting with the Digi-Eggs. Now, so I run 5 eggs in total, but the first 4 I'm running is Demi-Vemon from BT3, namely for its inherited, where your Digimon has jamming, you get to draw 1 when attacking. I still think this is the best egg for this deck. I'll explain why there is a 5th egg in a second, but yeah, the draw is it's ideal, especially if you're swinging with your level 4s just to try and get your pieces together. However, you're going to find with this particular deck, you're always going to have your pieces, and it will be very, very rare that you ever brick. But yeah, we start with 4 of the Demi-Vs. The 5th egg, I'm just running 1 of the new Demi-Vemon from the BT16, namely just for the DP boost. It's an all-turns effect where when your Digimon has 2 or more colours, it gains an additional 1000 DP. So it's actually coming quite in handy when going up against things like Tyrant. So yeah, just a 1 of him is ideal. I mean, you can choose to mix and match your ratios, but for me, that's the solid 5 cards to start with. Next up, we move into our level 3s. Now, to start with, this is a primarily blue base Imperialdramon deck. So starting with 4 of the promotional Vemon. It's pretty good, especially for this deck, but it has a your turn once per turn effect where effectively if you have a Tamer in play, you can digivolve into a Digimon with the free trait, but that Digivolution cost is reduced by 1. And its inherited is not a once per turn effect, but when attacking, if this Digimon has 2 colours or more, you get to draw 1. So you're going to be doing a lot of drawing as you swing. There's a lot of unsuspending in this deck, so in some turns you could be drawing anywhere up to 5 to 6 cards depending on the stack you've built. But yeah, this is a good start. Just 4 of the Vemon from promotional. The next 4 we're running is the BT12 Vemon. So with this one, this is the mandatory search for this deck, really. But on play, you reveal the top 3 cards of the deck, and you can add 1 card with either Imperialdramon in its name or 3 in its traits. And you can also add 1 Tamer with Davis Motomia in its name, and add those to your hand. The inherited effect is the end of turn effect for DNAing your Digimon, which ultimately is very handy. You're going to be finding, however, with this deck, ideally you'll want to be DNAing on your turn. However, we've got some good defensive cards in this deck where the end of turn actually might come in handy. But that's our next 4. Now, we are running 14 rookies, so we've still got a couple more to go through. But the next 4 is that of BT12 Wormmon. Now, for exactly the same reasons. It's an on-play. It's exactly the same as the Vemon, except the only difference is the fact that the Tamer, you would have to search for Ken Ishigo, or Ishitorjuri. I've got that completely wrong, just avoid that. But either way, you're going for Ken. Now, it's got the same inherited effect with the end of turn. But yeah, I mean, just having 8 cards with the capabilities of searching for the pieces you need is very, very good. And the fact that you're pretty much guaranteed to be picking up 2 targets almost every time is exceptional. So yeah, that's the only green colour rookie that I have in this deck. The last 2 cards I've only just swapped out. But the last 2 we're working with is Vemon from BT16. Now, I did have the 2 BT16 Wormmons in this deck, where the on-play effect would be you get to digivolve 1 of your Digimon into a level 4 Digimon with the free trait or Insectoid trait from your trash, and the cost would be reduced by 1. Now, it's a very good card, but I think more so for a green base build of Imperial. It also works very handily in the Imperial virus stuff. But the reason why I've swapped them out is because of one reason, and only one reason only, and that's the DP boost that this Vmon gives. Now, it also has a your turn effect, but when one of your other Digimon is played or digivolves, if it has the free trait or is green, you gain a memory. So you can gain memory with this. Additionally, because of the Demi Vmons that I'm playing, there's no issues with digivolving in the breeding area. But the inherited your turn effect, this Digimon gets an additional 2000 DP. So going up against things like Tyrant, where ultimately they could surprise you with an ace card and redirect. Ideally, you want to be having a little bit higher in DP. But at the same time, it's just a solid 2-off to have anyway. Having 14 rookies in this deck is key because the Tamers that this deck now uses plays out the rookies for fun. So yeah, it's just, I used to have 12, I've now increased it to 14. It's mainly because of what you'll be seeing later on in this video. I'm going to move on to the level 4s. Now, we're only running 10. I'll explain why shortly. But starting off with, we run 2 of EX Vmon from EX1. It's still a very, very good card for this deck. The only reason why it's been reduced now is just because of the, you are DNAing a lot more with this new build. So the unfortunately, the BT12 version is taking priority. But you can mix and match your ratios. The level 4s I've seen in most decks come with 12. However, I just believe that's too much personally. 10 works well for me. I've never really bricked them that badly, if at all. So yeah, I still work with the 10, but just a 2 of the EX1 XV. It comes automatically with jamming, and it's inherited also means that if your Digimon has Imperial in its name or free in its traits, it's going to gain jamming. So it's a very solid card just to have anyway. Moving on to the next blue level 4s, we've got our 3X Vmons from BT12. The your turn effect with this one is that when it would DNA Digivolve into a green Digimon card, it gains 1 memory. Additionally, it has the same inherited effect as the EX1 XV, which is giving your Digimon with Imperialdramon or free in its traits jamming. So yeah, they're my sort of 5 blue color sources for the level 4s, and they seem to work fine. Moving on to the green elements, so we're going to run 2 of the Stingmon from Starter Deck 9. This one is just good to have a 2 of, I believe. You can normally play it for a 4 cost. However, if you were to play it normally, you could reduce the cost by 1 as long as you have the blue Digimon in play. Additionally, it's not a once per turn effect, but when attacking, if you have a blue Digimon in play, you get to draw 1 card. So, which is pretty much all the time, because everything level 5 upwards is a blue and green Digimon. So just having a 2 of these is ideal. And then our last set of green color Digimon is that of Stingmon from BT12. So we run 3 of these. Again, it's exactly the same as the X-Vmon from BT12, but ultimately if you're DNAing into a blue Digimon this time, you still gain that 1 memory. The your turn effect, however, is not jamming. Instead, you get piercing, and this actually comes in handy quite often, especially if you want to swing into someone, kill it, and get those security checks in. But yeah, just a bog standard 10 level 4s for this particular deck. It seems to work fine for myself. However, you're welcome to mix and match your ratios. I've seen some people playing 4 of the BT12 sets and then only 1 of the EX1 XV or 1 of the Starter Deck Stingmon, or in some cases people have thrown in other cards like Toga Magumon from the latest set, or even in some cases running Magnamons. But yeah, I personally believe the XVs and the Stingmons are crucial for this deck, so I don't really see the need to take any more out. Level 5s. Now, we only run 8. Again, I've seen most builds are only running 7. I don't really know why, but I believe 8 is kind of necessary for this deck. 7 just seems, you're just gambling too much with 7. Like, if you do end up shuffling poorly, or your opponent cuts your deck in half, or does the whole, top 5 to the bottom of the deck shenanigans before the game starts, you may find that there are cases where you just don't find those level 5s. So just having 8 just means I'm able to find them at least once, should I have any issues. But starting with the first 2, we got the starter deck Imperialdramon from ST9. When digivolving, if it's DNA digivolved, you get the bottom deck one of your opponent's Digimon with 6,000 DP or less back to the bottom deck. And it's also, when attacking, it unsuspends, but it's a once per turn. So it's a good aggressive card, especially if for things like early game. But just, I would love to include more, but I'll explain why I'm running other DNA Digimon as well. But it's, I used to run 4 of these in my original deck before BT16. But yeah, sadly, with the new support that has come out, this card particularly has to take a back step now. But just 2 of those is fine. The next 2 is from BT12. Now we're playing the Imperialdramon from BT12. So again, when digivolving, if you trash the top 3 Digivolution cards of all of your opponent's Digimon, then if DNA digivolving, 2 of your opponent's Digimon with no Digivolution cards can attack until the end of their turn. Alongside of that, its inherited effect is an end of attack if it's got Imperialdramon in its name or 3 in its traits. You gain 1 memory, and that's not once per turn. So you will find that you can gain a couple of memory, because most of your Digimon in the level 5 upwards can unsuspend. So it's a good 2-off to have. For me personally, it's more for mirror matchups because of the whole partition effect, which we'll touch base on in a second. But being able to remove sources in a mirror match is crucial, I think. The Dino Beamon from BT12 is very good still. However, for me personally, I just believe running the Imperialdramon is more applicable to the game style that I run. But yeah, just a solid 2-off to have just in case, because finding that you play 1, you just never see it, whereas 2, you double your chances there, haven't you? So the next and last level 5 that we've run is 4 of the new Imperialdramon. This card is phenomenal, and it's exactly what this deck needed. But effectively, you DNA Digivolve, you suspend, well, you can even just normal Digivolve if you truly wanted to. However, it's when Digivolving effect is suspending all of your opponent's Digimon with as many or fewer Digivolution cards as this Digimon. And then if you DNA, you basically, in not so many words, their Digimon can't unsuspend until the end of their turn. When attacking, it's quite interesting. It's a once per turn effect, but you suspend one of your opponent's Digimon, and however, if you don't suspend something with this effect, your Imperialdramon can unsuspend. So you can, effectively swing twice. And well, with the first half of that effect, you're almost, you're guaranteed to suspend all of your opponent's Digimon. And this goes very well for things like Tyrant, who are mainly suspending anyway. But the best part of this card is the fact that it has partition initially, and it also has it as part of its inherited effects. You get to spam out the 2 level 4 sources underneath it, should this be deleted by an effect. The only exclusions of that would be if it dies in battle, then the effect doesn't trigger, or if you delete it using your own effects. So ideally, your opponent may, let's just say you hit something in their security that would delete this Imperialdramon. You would then spam out the 2 sources that are underneath it, the 2 level 4s, and then it would, essentially delete. But it's just a good recycle card for this deck. and it's customary to have 4 of these. This card is just too good not to have those 4, and that's why we're running 8. I'm running 8 Imperialdramons in total, but each for their own reasons. But the main card of this deck is this new one. Now, moving on to our level 6, we will start with the BT12 Dragon mode. So with this particular card, I actually quite like this one. And this is the reason why I'm running a 2 of. But when Digivolving, if this Digimon has a blue Digivolution card, you get to unsuspend it. If you have a green one, you get to suspend one of your opponent's Digimon. It also has an end of attack effect where, consequently, you can Digivolve into an Imperialdramon in its name with that particular cost reduced by 2. So it's just very good in going into the fighter mode for no cost. Or if you've decided to run the paladin mode of sorts, then naturally you can reduce that by 2. But yeah, it's just a solid two off to have. You still Digivolve for a cost of 3 on any of your Imperialdramons or Dino Bees, but being able to unsuspend if you're towards the end of your turn is actually kind of handy, because then you can avoid any heavy bodies trying to swing into it. And ultimately your opponent will then have to think about how to get it suspended or how to swing into it using raid or an unsuspension effect. So it is a very good card, and I'm still using 2 of them just because they're still very good. The next 2 I'm running is the new Imperialdramon Dragon mode. Now, I love this card. So this, when Digivolving effect, is that one of your opponent's Digimon or Tamers can't unsuspend until the end of their turn. Then, by suspending one of their Digimon or Tamers, you get to unsuspend this dragon. Its all turns effect is that when an effect plays or Digivolves one of your opponent's Digimon, then you can Digivolve into an Imperialdramon fighter mode without paying the cost. So it's purposely been built to, counter purple decks, mainly purple, black, in some cases green, but it's just a very good 2 of to have. Most decks I've seen may run upwards of 4. Personally, I think 4 is too much. I'm still quite happy with the ratios of my dragons. I'm only running 4 in total, so 2 of this one, 2 of the BT12. One's for aggression, the other one is defensive. I just think it's a nice even balance, and the dragons do often find themselves in the right situations for me. So it's very, very good. So yeah, just 4 dragons is what I'm running. And now moving on to the fighter modes. Now we only run 3 in total, but the first one we'll start with the BT12. If you're not familiar with this card, I would certainly recommend that you do. So this is a when Digivolving effect. So suspend all of your opponent's Digimon with no Digivolution cards, and then you can choose to either return one Digimon back to the hand, or you can bottom deck a dragon mode underneath this fighter, and then you can bottom deck all of your, it's not bottom deck. If you return the dragon mode back to your hand, you can then bottom deck all of your opponent's suspended Digimon. So it's a very good defensive card. I was running 2 of these in my previous build. I've reduced it to 1 because I'll show you the next fighter I'm playing. But the all turns effect as well is essentially if it has 2 or more colours in its Digivolution sources, it comes with blocker and security attack +1. So yeah, it's just a good one-off to have, especially if you're going against wider based decks. It can come in clutch, from time to time. But yeah, just a one-off is fine. I don't think I need to run any more. And then our next and last fighter mode is the new BT16 Imperialdramon fighter mode Ace from BT16. So naturally it's an Ace card, so you can blast Digivolve on any of your level 5s or the Dragon mode. It has both an on-play and a when Digivolving effect, but you get to return one of your opponent's Digimon with as many or fewer Digivolution cards as this Digimon. And it goes to the bottom of the deck. it also has an end of attack, but you get to unsuspend this Digimon. Then if you have the Dragon mode in its Digivolution cards, you can return one of your opponent's suspended Digimon to the bottom of the deck. So you can effectively bounce 2 targets, which is very handy. But yeah, it's just a very good 2-off to have in this deck. You know, being able to blast Digivolve is exceptionally handy, because ultimately your opponent is now going to have to think, you know, if you have that level 5 on board or level 6, they're going to have to think about, oh, if I swing, am I going to get bounced? And so they may have to change up their tactics. But yeah, I'm just running the 7 level 6s for now. But like I said, I mean, you can opt to change your ratios as you see fit. If you want to run 4 of the new Dragon mode and BT16, or run 4 of the fighter modes from the new set, go for it. This is just a deck that works for me, and you know, ultimately, I'm showing you this video as just a bit of a guide, really. Moving on to our Tamers, we only run 6, so we run 2 of the BT3 Davis Motomiya for obvious reasons. It's a memory setter. So you'll always start with 3 memory at minimum. It's on play, allows you to reveal the top 3 cards of your deck. You can add 1 blue Digimon card and 1 green Digimon card among them to your hand, and then you bottom deck the rest. In most times you'll find that this card does find the 2 sources you need. There are times where it will whiff. You know, you might end up picking up 3 option cards, or grabbing all blue Digimon or something, but just getting this out in play is kind of customary for this deck, because at least then you can work with 3 memory. This deck can still do some crazy stuff with just 1 memory, as long as you've got you know, the right setup going. But yeah, just having the memory setter out in play really does help things get going. So we run just 2 of those, and then for our next Tamer, we run a 4 of, but we're running 4 of the new Davis and Ken. So this particular card is exactly what this deck needed, and it goes very well, in fact, with the new virus stuff as well. But it has a start of main effect where you can play out the Vmon or a Wormmon from your hand without paying the cost. However, if that particular Digimon, whether you've Digivolved on top of it or not, it remains in play until the end of your opponent's turn, it will then be bounced back to your hand. It also has a your turn effect where ultimately if you Digivolve into a blue or a green Digimon, you get to suspend this Tamer to gain a memory. But if you DNA Digivolve, you can also trash any free Digivolution cards from under any of your opponent's Digimon cards. So it's very good for making sure that you set up to bounce into the fighter mode and then bounce things from board. At the same time, it's, you know, again, when you play this in a mirror match, it's ultimately going to come down to who's got the Davis and Kens in play. You know, you trash the sources for the partition effects so you don't avoid any issues later on. But it's just a solid card. It's, yeah, you need 4 of in this. I don't think I've actually seen any builds that don't run 4. And that's just because this card is so good. So yeah, we're just running the 6 of these particular Tamers. And then lastly, we'll move on to our option cards. Now, I'm only running 5, but to start with, let's go Megadeth. We run 2 of these. So I still think this deck needs some defensive capabilities. So having 2 Megadeth seems fair, I think. I will suggest some alternative cards in the tech section shortly, but I still think just running 2 of these is customary for this deck. It's just a solid card to hit in security. Not necessarily in a mirror match, but certainly against other decks. But yeah, it's just a really good 2-off to have. You know, the main effect is that you suspend one of your opponent's Digimon, and then you can return one of the opponent's suspended Digimon back to their hand. Security effect is that it obviously activates the main effect. So yeah, it's just a good 2-off to have. Next up, we still run it, we still will, and I probably will forever, but we're running a Hidden Potential discovered from BT3. Essentially, you can suspend one of your Digimon so that the next Digivolution into a green Digimon is reduced by 5. So yeah, I mean, we all know it's been restricted to 1 for a long time, but it's just, yeah, I still find this from time to time, and it's exceptionally handy to have. And, you know, even if you are suspending the same 1 Digimon you have in play just to Digivolve for no cost, it can come in handy, because if you need to get to that next level quicker and without needing to spend too much memory, this is the right card. Security effect is simply you just add this to hand. So it's not a defensive card in any form. It literally is just for aggression. So yeah, we'll just do 1 of those. And then our last 2 cards is that of the Invincible Dragon Insect Fusion. Now, this card is actually very good. And I think this is probably the kind of card that Bandai were considering for BT12. But I don't know why, obviously, but they obviously delayed it till the BT16. Its main effect is that you are allowed to play an XVmon or a Stingmon from your hand without paying the cost. Then 2 of your Digimon may DNA Digivolve into a Digimon card in your hand. And then until the end of your opponent's turn, that Digimon will Digivolve using this effect, can't be deleted in battle, and will gain blocker. The security effect is that you may play a Vmon or a Wormmon from your hand or trash without paying the cost, and then you add this card to your hand. So it's a good recycle card as well to hit in security, because you'll be allowed to use it twice. But yeah, I have seen only a couple of times where I've needed to use this in sort of desperate situations. But being able to block and not be able to be deleted in battle is actually kind of cool. You know, because there are going to be times where you will need to block. This deck has, you know, lacked the option of blocking for a long time, so I'm glad they've sort of included that. But yeah, I think a 2 of is enough for this. There are some decks that run upwards of 4 again, but I just think if you see it too many times, you're not really getting the pieces you need. But that's the 50 card deck for my profile. Like I said, feel free to use it as a guide and just chop and change your own ratios as you see fit. The tech cards I would consider, in terms of the eggs, I honestly wouldn't really recommend anything else. You can still run the 1 off of the Bukamon from, I think it's BT14. However, I mean, I took that out purely on the basis of making sure that I didn't have to spend 1 memory to Digivolve in the breeding area. In regards to level 3s, I'm going to post a profile for a green-based version of this deck at the end of the video, but ultimately the only other options would be things like any variant of the Wormmons from BT12 upwards to BT16. On top of that, you could possibly still recommend using the EX2 Labramon. However, I think, you know, with the new Tamer in this deck, ideally you want to be running just the Worms or the Vs to maximize your efforts. Level 4s, again, I really wouldn't consider much, if I'm completely honest. However, you know, as if it's going to be a green-based version, now I would naturally recommend playing the XVmon from the starter deck 9, because it has the same effect as the starter deck Stingmon, but for the green variant. On top of that, you could still run the Magnamons. Any variant will be fine. BT8, BT12, or the new ST17 version, which you can potentially play out from security. But otherwise, you know, you've got Toga Magumon, which is from BT16, that's come out. That seems to be an appropriate card that can be used. And being able to stun stuff is actually quite ideal. Level 5 wise, you've got the Dino B variants, but otherwise I wouldn't really recommend much more other than maybe Chimeramon from BT8. But again, I don't really see how that would fit in all of this, if I'm completely honest. The level 6s, I mean, ideally you're playing dragon modes or fighter modes. There's no ifs or buts. You can run the odd Magnum on X or Magnum on, sorry, just the Magnum on X, whether that be the BT9 variant or the BT16, maybe just as a different guide. But realistically, let's face it, you're going to be playing the fighters or the dragons. Level 7s, I haven't really considered any, if I'm brutally honest. You know, in my last build, I was running 1 Quartzmon and 1 Defexmon, so you could probably still do the same if you mix and match your ratios. I mean, I'm running 14 rookies, so I could go back down to 12 and throw those 2 back in, but I really don't see the need to. The deck is so strong as it is. That just, I mean, you go down to Defex anyway, it's a staple card, you can throw that in any deck. Quartzmon is just good at suspending everything and almost guaranteeing game, so long as your opponent isn't able to do something about it on the next turn. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, I would only consider those 2. You got the Paladin mode as well, but I'll be brutally honest, I wouldn't even bother playing that. You've got the new one coming out in BT17 anyway, and that's going to be customary for this deck when that comes out, because I think it's white, blue, and green, so it's 3 colours. In terms of options, the only tech cards I can think of, you've got Gigadef, you could run that, maybe a one-off. On top of that, I mean, I still think this card is underappreciated, but you've got Blue Card from EX2, just in case you're feeling, I mean, if you're a Yu-Gi-Oh fan, if you're feeling a bit like Joey Wheeler, you can gamble with that card, especially if you are bricking. But I mean, again, it's just a tech choice, really. On top of that, you've got Giant Missile from the ST17 stuff. That card is just incredibly strong. It's certainly a card I'd probably use in my green base build of this. But otherwise, I mean, they're the tech cards that are just off the top of my head, but they are all very good cards to consider. But that's it. That's literally everything in regards to this deck profile video. So thank you again for watching. Let me know what you think about it, or what potentially you might change. Just leave a comment in the box below, and I'll take a look. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. All support is appreciated, and we are going to be diving heavily in BT16 related decks going forward, so expect a lot more videos to come. But otherwise, thank you very much and take care.